Pittsburgh. The industrial age, the steel mills are long gone. A new industry has established itself. Here, robots are being designed. This one, named Chimp, is testing its limbs on its own.
You could essentially, in the not too distant future, tweet thoughts.
I can not only imagine artificial intelligence evolving spontaneously on the internet, but I can't tell you that it hasn't happened already. Because it wouldn't necessarily reveal itself to us.
My dishwasher came to me and said, look, I'm falling in love with your refrigerator. And as a result, I have no time to wash your dishes. I wouldn't like that dishwasher.
Will our children's children's children need the companionship of humans? Or will they have evolved in a world where that's not important?
This here is Robot 8. It's very identifiable because its pattern includes 4 green dots on top, and it's one of our favorites, actually.
Beautiful. Do you love it?
Yes, we do. We do love Robot 8.
So thank you. This is like my second or third event I go to after being in prison, so maybe I treat you a bit like I treat other people now. So I have written a text, and I'm going to read it for you. It might be boring, but I hope that you get my message. So, there's a few big moments in life where you feel that something moves you deeply. Graduating school, getting your first kiss, writing that first book, publishing that first scientific document, maybe a loved one dies, getting your first customer in your cafe. Some of them might seem small and trivial to others, but to you they're huge and life-altering. Recently I got a similar feeling, a feeling that we reached a certain critical mass. A critical mass that are upset with the current state of the internet, no, the current state of policing the internet and what it promises the world. A critical mass that finally understands that we're on the way to a broadcast democracy with little peer involvement. What happened? Well, the Pirate Bay was shut down. It tilted people's brain into knowing that tomorrow their favorite TV shows must be downloaded somewhere else. They thought about it a bit and decided this is the beginning of a slippery slope. They understand that maybe this means that alternative content might be hard to ever reach, if at all. That this thing that we're centralizing the internet, having just a handful of centralized services, mostly owned by a company in one single country, a country that does not care about borders when it comes to their own gauntlets, is not maybe a great idea. A movement is forming, a movement away from this, and tomorrow when you wake up, it will climax into a whole bunch, maybe even a whole million of people that will see the group stop destroying the internet or give us the Pirate Bay back on Facebook. And you will all click the like button and you will feel proud. You finally did it, you stopped the internet from being destroyed. But of course, this will not change anything. The internet will keep getting destroyed. It will keep becoming more and more centralized. You can't do anything anymore. We tried, we sucked at it. The few people that really did anything are now old, some are even dead. The young ones believe in the system and try to change it from within. It's like trying to beat capitalism by trying to capture all of the money. Every now and then, we win a fight against one of the oppressive new measures, like we did with ACTA and SOPA and PIPA. We congratulate ourselves and feel important. In essence, we just lost 10 other battles that we didn't even know about. We have our own celebrities. We had WikiLeaks, we had Snowden, we had Manning, we had Aaron Swartz. Some are dead, some are in jail. Some are in hiding, scared for their actual lives. What people reveal, what people fight for are major causes. Freedom of information, liberty, democracy, governmental transparency and due process, things we take for granted that are the basis for a modern, safe society. We talk about it a lot. We're upset, we cry, we scream, sometimes we protest. We have t-shirts, we have our symbols, we have our masks, our conferences, our Transmediale, we have debates, we even get detention. People in general, like us, our opponents are old, fat, bastard, whore, corporate sellouts. They're mostly rich men from the United States of America. They're super corrupt, they're easy to hate. It's like any good Hollywood movie. But we've all been fooled. We lost. There's no need in fighting anymore. We lost a long time ago by cornering ourselves. There's no use to struggle. There's no point in being positive in. The only positive thing about it all is that we no longer have to worry. It's all predetermined. It's all a waste. There's no more any we or us. We're becoming drones, mind or without, it does not matter. We built the system, we trusted it because we trusted ourselves. We are all drones, maybe we've always been that. As Christopher just mentioned, I was recently locked up. I was kidnapped by the Kingdom of Sweden for trying to resist. I did right, both legally and morally. The kingdom was wrong. We all knew it, but I was a fool to think that right and wrong had anything to do with it all. Morals are no more. They've been replaced by control. Right is just a word that no longer has any meaning. It's a trick to keep people from being scared. Until you reach the edge, you believe in the system, even though people know in the back of their minds that they don't want to look over the edge. We all praise the internet for the liberty it brings, but it's become the essence of what's wrong. We praise technology almost like a savior, but it's the thing that keeps us in check. We show the examples of good things we've achieved with technology, with the internet, with leaking, with sharing, but it does not hold its merits. There is no long-term effects. Globalization by virtue of capitalism won. We talk about robots and technology taking our jobs, as if jobs had a higher goal in themselves besides what needs to be done. But when building these computerized and automatic systems, we created new jobs, and all of these new jobs are based in technology, and they feel so free in the Western world. It's almost like you're never at work. We even have our offices at home. We're always connected. We're happy to get to work with our friends. We don't see that we're becoming robots that work all the time, only associate with our coworkers, and that we don't have any free time anymore. We don't need robots, we are them. We are no longer in between jobs, we're in between startups. We talk about startups and entrepreneurship as the future, as if it's something new. We outmaneuvered ourselves into believing that alone means strong. Who ever heard about a startup going on strike against their customers over their bad working conditions? We're fucking up the work done by the unions for past centuries. For the promise of self-fulfillment, sourdough bread, cool bicycles, and a cheap apartment in Kreuzberg with second-hand IKEA furniture. The same furniture I recently discovered firsthand is made by forced laborers in Swedish and German prisons, by the way. There's no point in fighting. Whatever you think you can contribute, it's wrong. Life is not pointless, but trying to alter the content and path of life is futile. We're all privileged and super lazy. We never talk about revolutions anymore, except when creating a new hipster fixed bicycle wheel that will change the world. A term which today is slang for getting 15 minutes of fame for your product. Not you. And no, you're not the product as everyone has been saying about the internet. You're not that interesting. You're only a wallet. Call it activism, call it work, call it art, call it whatever you want. I've tried, my friends tried, you all tried, but capitalism won. It's game over. We're too lazy, we're too tired, we're too content. We just want our Nespresso machines and we don't want any responsibility. We blame our politicians even though we elect them. The politicians have no say anyhow. It's not about money, it's about the control. And it's not that we're blind. In the Matrix, Neo gets to decide. Does he want to live in a blissful ignorance, or does he want to see the real world? When he decides to leave the Matrix, he wakes up and realizes he's just one of many humans that are being kept as resources. It wakes him up so hard that he can't ignore fighting in the Matrix. But in our world, we see the issues daily. We see the beggars, we see the gender inequality, we see the rainforest being wrecked, the oil heating the planet, whales being slaughtered. We see our human rights being violated, we see the loss of privacy. We know we're being monitored by cameras and microphones everywhere. We even carry them around ourselves to help our opponents. The leaks from Manning and Snowden has not changed one single thing of essence. We're not blind, we're totally full-sighted, and we're awake. It's very telling that for some reason there's even career opportunities in being managers of human resources. We can't wake up from being awake. This year's Transmediale is named Capture All. For me, that phrase might refer to something else than it does for you. But my view is that a few is trying to capture all. They're capturing all the control, all the money, all the information, all the politicians, all the power, even all the sourdough bread. We're not even trying to stop it, we're actually helping them to do it. And on second thought, they're not trying to capture it, they already did. And as I learned from the movie 1984, the only way to win the game is not to play. But if we have to, it's time we set the rules and recapture all. Thank you.
the concept of wearing in rather than wearing out. You'd like to create something where the emotional relationship is more satisfying over time, and that you may not worry about it or think about it very clearly, and people don't sort of, you know, have a strong, they don't have to have a strong love relationship with their things, but they should grow sort of a little more fond of them, perhaps, over time. For example, on the laptop that I designed, it's actually magnesium enclosure, but it has a paint on the outside. And when it gets dinged, you know, if it's dropped and a bit of paint chips off and you see some of the magnesium showing through, somehow it feels better because of that. The computer we call the Grid Compass, a compass computer, and arguably the first laptop that was actually ever produced is this one. You could carry it with you. And we designed it to be thin enough to fit in half your briefcase, so you could put papers in as well. Then there was a leg at the back that flipped down to put it at the right angle for using at the ergonomic preferred angle of 11 degrees. And we wanted to devise a hinge that would allow it to rotate so the display could come up, but also not let anything into the electronics behind. So in order to avoid something like a pencil falling into it, let me just show you what could happen. If you put a pencil on the back, it would roll down and drop inside. I designed a scoop that would then self-eject the pencil when you closed it. There's the little trick of that. When I got the first working prototype, I took the machine home, you know, really thrilled about wanting to use it myself. And it was with great pride that I sort of, you know, opened up the display and thought how clever I was to have designed this latch and this hinge and all this stuff. And then I started to actually try and use it. And within a few moments, I found myself forgetting all about my physical design and realizing that everything that I was really interested in was happening in my relationship between what was happening behind the screen. I felt like I was kind of being sucked down into the machine, and the interaction between me and the device was all to do with the digital software and very little to do with the physical design. And that made me realize that if I was going to truly design the whole experience, I would really have to learn how to design this software stuff. That made me search for a name for it, which we ended up calling interaction design.
ideas about how the world operates and how I want to build my systems come through software. For me, software is the most natural medium to work with. So I'm Casey Reas. I'm an artist, educator, open source developer, software developer. For me, things start off with drawing and sketching, like they often do. But then from there, they progress into code. So that's a process where you basically open up a text editor and start writing down your thoughts. But instead of, for example, writing a poem or an essay or a fiction, the thoughts are more about organizing logic and procedures. And in my case, they always make images. So it goes from an idea of what an image might be to some code that then creates an image again. At that point, back and forth. You pick one and then you make a lot of iterations on that, and you find your way through it. There's never really any end goal, but there's a lot of things that happen. Well, the original inspiration was my interest in this idea of emergence. This idea of emergence is that you put a few simple rules together and something comes out of that which is entirely unexpected and moves beyond what you could imagine those simple rules producing. So if you're a composer, the final piece you produce is a score. That is your end piece. And I think a lot of the instructions that I write or the software that I write is being a score. And in the case of a music performance, every performance is different because the performer injects their interpretation on top of that. In my case, every time the software is performed differently in software by the computer, and some elements unfold differently every time. I think that's a really exciting way to work with computers because, stereotypically they're such calculating, precise machines. Being able to allow unexpected things to happen is an exciting way to work with them. They're both based on the first element, element one. And this is an example of, with emergence, how things can be entirely just following the rules from the bottom up, or you can impose constraints and see how that affects the growth. And so they're both based on the same element, which are essentially just circles. And the way the process works is when the circles overlap, you just draw a line between their centers. And so all the lines that you see on these images are formed when two circles overlap. But in this one, the rule is they can only emerge from the center. And on this one, the rule is they emerge from this bisecting line on the page. And so you can see the similarities and how they're based on the same thing, but sort of the different qualities of the image by changing this one rule. For me, I use color sort of similarly. I think about it as how sound is used in films. If you're watching a film, you know how to feel about a certain scene depending on the sound. It can be either in contrast to what you're seeing or vice versa. But in the last few years, I've been using mostly gray values and then doing small color experiments to sort of imbue a different emotion or give the work a different quality. Myself and Ben Fry, we've been developing this project in tandem. Processing is a programming language. The basic way I'd like to explain it is we're really excited about software and programming as a medium for designers, artists, architects, basically creative people to explore. Processing itself at its core is very minimal, but we built into this library system that allows people to extend it. And that's where the larger community has done amazing things with it. It's being used in the film industry for doing special effects. It's being used by students in graphic design programs for doing visual work that then becomes posters. It's really become a tool that's used across so many fields that it's been a really interesting to see how it's allowed different people to collaborate together because they're using the same basic system. The boundary between software and object has always been so far away, and that's collapsing extremely rapidly at the moment. You can now I can write a program for doing a 3D form, I can export it in a certain format, I can send it to a company, and then a week later I can get back a package with a stainless steel object that is that form that I programmed. And I think that is extremely exciting. And most recently, I've been getting really excited about collaborations. I did a recent collaboration with Tal Rosner, who's a London-based video artist, for doing a 7,000 square foot projection on a new Frank Gehry building, the project called Chronograph. So I've been moving away from screens and sort of moving into public space. I mean, I have so many ideas that I want to pursue. Now it's just a moment of huge transition.
villages to villages, rum vein and images. My crew runs till his tongue's out. Pillaging, don't sleep. It's still Cambodia. Villages to villages, rain sun.
In the club we 내가 울려야 돼 마스 마시 your boy that's cuz 간호줘 발레다 la high that's puts 니 날이 마스 내 몸이에 마스 stage 가라 무갓대 size and let's stage 가라 우리 따라 high the abyss 아나다 하나's vibe show scandalous 혼돈이 헛더 like banana guts drive me crazy 몸 크기 scared そして君もやっぱ俺を見つめてると思ってたけどスルーされ彼女言ったバーのYo, hello, my name is Wise 呼ばれてマイク持って自己紹介やるだけやってあとは交代じゃあそろそろみんな集めて乾杯取りこうぜバーの方へ向かう途中誰かとぶつかる振り返り大丈夫と聞く僕振り返る彼女と目が合いとくんスケー可愛い girl of my dreams 相手感激 can I get you a drink 質問に対し笑顔で I see ちょっと待っててと念をし彼女に背を向けば天にオーダーそれがそもそもの間違いだ気づきゃ手には二つのテキーラどこ探しても彼女いねえな
What I find fascinating about textiles is that the structure of textiles is the same to the structure of touchscreens, which we're using in everyday mobile devices and tablets. That means that if you just replace some of the threads in textiles with conductive threads, you should be able to weave the textile, which can recognize a variety of simple touch gestures, just like any normal touch panel you have on a mobile phone. So if we can hide or weave interactivity and input devices into the materials, that will be the first step to making computers and computing invisibly integrated into the objects and materials and clothing. So this is exciting to me. The challenge of creating Jaquard yarn was to create yarn that is highly conductive and at the same time scalable, which means it could be used on industrial weaving machines everywhere in the world.
For textile designers or fashion designers or furniture designers, it is interesting because it's something you are very familiar with. It's just textile. We made the yarn very thin and feels so natural, so it looks like just normal yarn. The only thing that's different is it's conductive. We work with textile designers from all over the world, and it's really interesting to see what kind of possibilities that we can have. Could be visible, very obviously, like it's here, but also can be totally invisible. So we're creating possibilities by combining different way of weaving technique, and that's totally up to designers to choose, and it's up to their creativity.
We're trying to shrink down all the components down to the size of a button, and ultimately this will be something that's so small we can embed into the manufacturing process. So the users won't even see it or feel it inside the garment.
The idea that Jaquard is an interface that is blended into the clothing that we wear, that has an implication in the way that you would use services, products, applications, and anything that we do through our devices. It's somehow getting the technology out of the way and making interactions more natural and more seamless.
In terms of what the technology can do, it's really up to the user and to the designers, and we expect that users can reconfigure it as much as they want to. Software development and fashion design often don't exist in the same place, so we're hoping to make it very simple for each of those parties to collaborate, and we're hoping to provide both software and hardware knowledge and components to make those collaborations very easy.
We like to think that we have these iconic products that haven't changed much, but the world is changing. So I think Jaquard presents a great opportunity for brand, for design, to open a door to the future.
In tailoring, we use methods that have been used and not changed for 200 years. So when something new comes along, it's really exciting. What's amazing about the project is that I don't have to have any knowledge about the electronics and how it works. So let's see what we can create with it.
Jaquard is a blank canvas for designers and developers. We are just at the beginning, and we are really excited to see what people are going to do with it.
The hand is the ultimate input device. It's extremely precise, it's extremely fast, and it's very natural for us to use it, right? Capturing the possibilities of human hand was one of my passions. How can we take this incredible capability, finesse of human actions, of finesse of using our hand, but apply it to the virtual world? We use radio frequency spectrum, which is radars, to track human hand. The radars has been used for many different things, to track cars, big objects, satellites and planes. We're using them to track micro motions, twitches of human hands, and then use that to interact with wearables and Internet of Things and other computing devices.
Our team is focused on taking radar hardware and turning it into a gesture sensor. Radar is a technology which transmits a radio wave towards a target, and then the receiver of the radar intercepts the reflected energy from that target. The reason why we're able to interpret so much from this one radar signal is because of the full gesture recognition pipeline that we've built. The various stages of this pipeline are designed to extract specific gesture information from this one radar signal that we receive at a high frame rate.
From these strange foreign range Doppler signals, we're actually interpreting human intent.
Radar has some unique properties when compared to cameras, for example. It has very high positional accuracy, which means that you can sense the tiniest motions.
We arrived at this idea of virtual tools because we recognized that there's certain archetypes of controls, like a volume knob or a physical slider, a volume slider. Imagine a button between your thumb and your index finger, and the button's not there, but pressing this is a very clear action, and there's a natural physical haptic feedback that occurs as you perform that action. The hand can both embody that virtual tool, and it can also be acting on that virtual tool at the same time. So if we can recognize that action, we have an interesting direction for interacting with technology.
So when we started this project, me and my team, we looked at the project idea and we thought, are we going to make it or not? We don't know, but we have to do it. Because unless you do it, you don't know.
And what I think I'm most proud of about our project is we have pushed the processing power of the electronics itself further out to do the sensing part for us.
The radar has properties which no other technology has. It can work through materials, can embed it into the objects. It allows to track really precise motions. And what is most exciting about it is that you can shrink the entire radar and put in a tiny chip. That's what makes this approach so promising. It's extremely reliable. There's nothing to break. There's no moving parts. There's no lenses. There's nothing. It's just a piece of sand on your board.
Now we're at a point where we have the hardware where we can sense these interactions and we can put them to work. We can explore how well they work and how well they might work in products.
Blows your mind usually when you see things people do. And that's what I'm really looking forward to. I'm really looking forward to releasing this to the development community, and I really want them to be excited and motivated to do something cool with it, right?
Giers gilt als einer der Pioniere der Electronic Art. Er hat 1968 bereits die erste Ausstellung in dem Bereich gemacht. Wurde dann 1971 entdeckt, wenn man so will, von Hans Meyer, Denise René. Die haben eine Ausstellung von ihm dann gleich komplett aufgekauft. Und das war dann so der Punkt, an dem es dann hieß, Walter, du bist jetzt Künstler. Okay, hat er gesagt. Und hat dann ab dem Zeitpunkt als Künstler gearbeitet in dem Bereich.
Er war ein Forscher, ein Wilderer auf allen Gebieten, einer, der interdisziplinär die Dinge zusammenführen wollte und bewegt hat dadurch.
Er wollte immer, dass sich die Bilder, die er macht, verändern. Also er war mit so einem statischen Angebot nicht einverstanden, das fand er einfach langweilig und hat dann eben gesagt, okay, wenn ich jetzt ein Bild verändern möchte oder einen Klang verändern möchte, muss man da ein paar Schalter dran machen oder Knöpfe. Damit die Leute damit spielen, damit es sich verändert, eben wie ein Musikinstrument zu einem interaktiven Ding wird. Und so ist dann quasi aus Zufall heraus auch 1969 das erste interaktive Bild entstanden. Das ist jetzt ein Nachbau von 2009. Man schließt den Stromkreis, dadurch ergibt sich ein Sound ganz direkt. Dann hat er sich gefragt, wie kann ich das denn jetzt machen, dass die Bilder sich von alleine verändern und der Klang sich von alleine verändert. Also auch nicht ein statisches Angebot wie ein Lied, wenn man es immer wieder hört, wiederholt sich es irgendwann, wird langweilig, wollte er nicht und hat dann den Zufallsgenerator entwickelt. Und das hier ist im Prinzip ein Beispiel davon. Also das Objekt heißt Musik für 53.553.077 Jahre, 277 Tage, 18 Stunden, 21 Minuten und 3 Sekunden. So lange dauert das Lied, bis es sich wiederholt. Durch einen Zufallsgenerator werden die Samples immer neu arrangiert. Man hat 2 Sequenzen, die wiederholen sich, werden allerdings jedes Mal neu sortiert. Dadurch hat man immer ein neues Erlebnis, man kann nie vorhersagen, was kommt und wenn man zuhört, wird es nicht langweilig.
Von rechts, von links, dann von rechts, dann Kompanie, Gespenster, zugleich Erfahrungen, Sprachen, künstliches Wesen.
Ja, Zufall ist natürlich für mich eine ganz bedeutende Entwicklung gewesen. Am Anfang standen die interaktiven Objekte, weil es nicht anders ging. Ja, wenn ich einen Tongenerator mache und will verschiedene Töne mit dem machen, dann muss ich ein paar Schalter dran machen. Und dazu habe ich, wie gesagt, den Menschen genommen, der dann die Schalter betätigt hat, damit sich das Bild verändert. Also praktisch erst die Dimension erreicht, die ich beabsichtige. Und dann habe ich Anfang der 70er Jahre gemerkt, mit dem Zufallsgenerator kann ich ja diese Sachen auch automatisch machen. Also nicht automatisch im Sinne von einem Programm, sondern sie werden eigenständig, die Objekte. Und das war für mich sehr wichtig, wenn ich in Eigenleben einhauchen will. Aber eigentlich die meisten Objekte, die ich mache oder die mich auch interessieren, sind eben die Wechselwirkung.
Du spielst doch komplett. Ja, ich bin der Weltbau und ich bin nicht. Ja, der ist doch richtig. Der ist doch nicht. Sag mal, möchtest du mit mir streiten?
Er hat sich gerne im Hintergrund präsentiert eigentlich, also er war nicht aufdringlich, im Gegensatz zu seiner Kunst. Also seine Kunst, laute Objekte, die auch mal nerven können, war dann so sein Sprachrohr irgendwie, um auch mal von der Seite rein zu pieksen, auf humoristische Weise. Walter hat sich sehr engagiert in seiner Wahlheimat, wo wir hier sind, Schwäbisch Gmünd, und hat für seine Leistungen als Dank vom damaligen Oberbürgermeister Schuster einen Stadtturm zur Verfügung gestellt bekommen, als Lager- und Ausstellungsort mittlerweile auch. Und das ist sehr spannend, das Ambiente da drin, ne? Ein mittelalterlicher Turm, ausgestattet mit Elektronik und Licht- und Klanginszenierungen.
Islam. Minister Nachrichten. Bedingungen.
Es gab viele Objekte mit Lichtsteuerung und Klangsteuerung. Das sind elektronische Spielobjekte gewesen damals. Also er hat das gar nicht als Kunst bezeichnen wollen. Das war ihm einfach zu eitel. Er sagte auch immer oft, wenn er sich vorgestellt hat, er ist Elektroniker. Diese Spielobjekte wurden dann auch mal von Kraftwerk entdeckt in einer Ausstellung. Die haben dann da ein kleines spontanes Konzert draufgegeben. Also ich denke, er war seiner Zeit voraus. Es gibt heute Sounds, die hip sind, die kenne ich aus Objekten von vor 40, 50 Jahren fast. Eine seiner großen Leidenschaften war zum Beispiel Konrad-Katalog zu lesen, also elektronische Bauteile durchzublättern und sich dann zu überlegen, was könnte man denn jetzt daraus Neues machen. Ne? Also er hat immer so Heftchen geschrieben, so eine ganze Palette voll mit Heftchen seit den 70er Jahren mit Ideen drin und da sind überall kleine Schaltungen drin, was könnte man denn jetzt machen. Und das äußert sich dann natürlich auch in den Objekten, die alle unterschiedliche Funktionen haben. Es gibt Multivibratoren, erweiterte oder Monoflops, die dann im Grunde als Sequencer funktionieren. Kann man dann Samples reinschießen und die werden geloopt quasi. Ja, damals gab es das Wort Loop in dem Kontext wahrscheinlich noch gar nicht. Vor allem war er eben ein Macher. Das hat er immer gesagt. Er ist einfach ein Macher. Das heißt, er ist jeden Morgen in seinen Café gegangen und hat 2 Stunden lang wirklich Ideen gemacht an neuen Konzepten, was man umsetzen kann. Ist dann für 1 Stunde ins Büro, hat seine Leute delegiert und ist dann sofort ins Atelier verschwunden und hat den ganzen Tag gearbeitet. Und zwar jeden Tag bis zum Schluss. Also auch noch, als er im Sterben lag, jetzt über die letzten Jahre, hat er weiter Ideen gemacht. Ich erinnere mich noch an eine Szene, da hat er mich zu sich beordert und konnte kaum mehr sprechen. Also es war für mich ganz schwierig, ihn zu verstehen. Und er sagte, Sohn, Synthesizer. Wusste ich, er meint seinen MS-20-Synthesizer. Und habe den dann angeschleppt. Und dann meinte er, Kondensator. Ne? Habe ich einen Kondensator geholt und dann meinte er, jetzt dran löten. Ich wusste nicht genau, was er meint. Und irgendwann habe ich dann verstanden, Filter, irgendwie. Was für ein Filter, ne? Was meint denn der Mann? Habe ich mich ein bisschen informiert und habe dann gesehen, aha, mit einem Kondensator kann man einen Hochpassfilter machen. Ne? Sollte ich tatsächlich an diesem Korg MS-20, ne? Ein Geld wert das Teil, einen Kondensator dran löten, habe ich dann auch gemacht und habe dann gehört, aha, so habe ich jetzt einen Hochpassfilter. Und so hat er mir dann noch zum Schluss Sachen beigebracht, wie man arbeitet, elektronisch. Das war sehr schön.
Also es gab immer Themen, in die Walter sich 200% reingestürzt hat. Also der typische Forschergehirn dieses Tunneldenkens. Also er hat irgendetwas anvisiert und dann ist er da hinterher, bis er es erforscht hatte, in alle Mikrozellen. Nach der Arbeit in den letzten 3 Jahren, die unser Sohn Viktor und ich jetzt geleistet haben, haben wir inzwischen einen Überblick von dem unglaublichen Werk, was er geschaffen hat in seinem ganzen Leben. Obwohl wir 33 Jahre zusammengelebt haben, war mir das gar nicht so bewusst. Das ist toll, tolle Sache.
I am Jurg Lehni. I'm a designer and artist from Switzerland, and I'm here at the SF MoMA, where I've been installing Victor, a drawing machine that I've created. It's a machine that is computer controlled and it makes large-scale wall drawings with chalk. I wanted to start making my own printing devices. And so the first one was Hector, a spray paint output device, as I called it. It's similar to Victor, what you see now at the SF MoMA. The machine is trying to make this drawing as perfectly as it can, but then it's struggling with gravity and mechanical constraints, instabilities, it's fragile. It's doing something that we're doing in a way that we can relate to, like we can see it holding the pen and moving it. It's something that people can connect to, and I think it adds to the aesthetic of the outcome. And I wasn't fully aware of all the potential when I built this machine, but then when it finally came to life, we called it the Frankenstein moment, because it was like, you know, you're having this idea of what you're making, and then eventually it comes to life and it behaves differently, it has a different character. So with Victor, just because it's using chalk on a chalkboard, you naturally find yourself in this situation that resembles a lecture. And then later on, this idea turned into this other idea of non-verbal lectures, where the machine is just illustrating a topic and it's going through different drawings that then together form a sort of a narrative. So at the SF MoMA, the topic is called A Taxonomy of Communication. And the topic is very broadly how we communicate, how we print, how we write, how we transmit information, but also how we read or how we interface or interact with the technology and the tools that do so. So it's not just talking about technology and devices, it's talking about language and it's talking about alphabets. It's talking about, you know, reading, how we read and how we transmit information. If we don't have technology, we make smoke signals. I mean, that's also technology. I try to then find things that are working as a story, but also are visually appealing. And on each wall, there's like 5 to 6 or 7 drawings of, of these little stories. One I really like is you see 2 hands, and then on each finger is written the letters that this finger is pressing on a 10-finger keyboard. So this is actually a mnemonic chart for you to learn how to type on a typewriter. It talks about the hands using a machine, but it talks about the human being learning to interface with this machine. So this one simple drawing pulls in so many things. And that's a perfect example for me. It's seeing technology as a language and a vocabulary rather than an infrastructure that allows corporations to dictate our behavior. Instead of just taking the existing tools, you should also be able to make your own.
used to be young like so many of you. But now I realize that they were making the list of speakers and said, wait, we need like an old guy. So that's me. And what does the old guy do? He's supposed to drop wisdom, like the kid says, right? What the kids say. So I will attempt to give you a short 20 minutes worth of wisdom. This is what I've learned being alive on this earth, okay? 7 years old, I was nerdy, lonely, chubby, introverted, good at school, got good grades, bad at sports, fatal combination. But then I found out that I knew how to do something that almost no one I knew how to do. I knew how to draw. And that became my secret superpower. And I really didn't try to keep it a secret. I like really needed people to know that I knew how to draw. This is a drawing I did that my dear parents got me Saturday morning art classes at the Cleveland Museum of Art. This is a copy of a painting there. It's The Burning of the Houses of Parliament by J.M.W. Turner, 1835. That's his version. Explosions, fire, 7-year-olds love that sort of thing. But I discovered something else when I was a kid, and it's that like there's magic everywhere in the world around us. Magic created by our fellow human beings. Magic in the most unlikely places. I was going to get a haircut with my dad. He was driving, I was on the passenger side. We were at a red light. There was a construction site to our left, and he looked over towards me and past me and out the window, and he saw a forklift truck at the construction site. And he said, oh, look, isn't that clever? And I said, what? And he said, the logo. And I said, he might not call it a logo. He said, look at the way they wrote the name of the truck. And I said, why is it clever? And he said, well, look, the L is lifting up the leg of the A just like the truck does. And I was like, oh my God. You know, is this happening like everywhere? Where else is this happening? And so I thought if I could just somehow, you know, like I thought, you know, I don't know even what that is, what's it called, like how you do it, but like that's just seemed like the coolest thing in the world to me. It's like art for a purpose, right? And art has other purposes. Art can make you get a better grade. Age 11, this is my 6th grade social studies report on the Titanic, way ahead of James Cameron. A+, underlined twice from Miss McDonald, an outstanding report, exclamation point. It was really an excellent report, by the way, but this is really what got it that extra notch, right? The Bic pen rendering of the mighty ship going down, thank you. So art can like help sell things, you know, and you guys all know that. But it took me a while to figure out what the difference was between the thing that I really liked and like the art like Turner's Burning of the Houses of Parliament at the museum. And I realized that, you know, record covers and book jackets and movie posters, they were out in the world. You didn't need to pay admission to see them. You didn't need to go to the museum. They were like everywhere. And I thought, you know, I love this kind of art that can kind of go everywhere. And then finally, I was 15 years old, and the guys who ran the print shop at my school said, we're doing a poster for the play. You're good at art. Could you do the artwork for it? And so I did some artwork for it. I gave it to them like on, say, a Friday. Came in on Monday, and the poster was everywhere. This was the play, Wait Until Dark. I don't know if you know it. It's a great story about a blind woman being tormented by some bad guys, and she outsmarts them using her superior powers of being blind, sightless. And this is the poster I did. I didn't know where you got type. I didn't know like anything, but I walked in Monday morning and it was everywhere. It was like on every hallway, every doorway, in the stairwells, on the front door. I was like famous. I didn't even sign it, and I felt like I am famous. My poster is like everywhere. More people would see this poster than would actually see the play, even though it only costs $1. And so I thought, you know, this is really what it is. But then I luckily found a book, and it was the book that changed my life. It was in, again, the Normandy High School, Parma, Ohio, school library on a little shelf called the Resource Library. Shout out Parma, thank you. Here's the book. It's by a really great designer, by the way, named Neil Fujita, and it's called Aim for a Job in Graphic Design / Art. It is part of the AIM High Vocational Series, which also includes aim high for a job in baking, aim high for a job in banking, aim high for a job in barber. So how lucky I was to find that there was this thing called graphic design. And it was like when Adam and Eve started naming the animals. It was like this thing had a name, and it was called graphic design. It was different than art. It was this art for a purpose. So then, right then, I knew I had to be a graphic designer, and this is like all I ever wanted to be. I'm like my partner, Eddie Opara. I'm not just a designer, I'm a graphic designer. It's all I ever wanted to be. And I went to my college counselor, and I said, find places that teach graphic design. That's what I want to do. And I got admitted to the University of Cincinnati College of Design, Architecture, and Art. And I went off there, and then I learned what we've all learned. The only way to get better at something is to do it really bad, and then you get better. But you have to keep doing it bad, and then you get a little bit better. So I did, like, this is like, you know, like there's Helvetica and stuff, right, and a grid and stuff. The thing that's really bad about it, though, is for a photography class, and that's what I was really, really bad at. And so that picture in the background was, I've never admitted this in public, but I didn't take that picture, my girlfriend took it. I took a very similar picture that I ruined in the lab by scratching the negative or something, so I said, Dorothy, can I use your picture? P.S. I married her, and I'm still married to her 35 years later, so. Okay, this is the one you can write down and tweet. People always want to look for mentors. Then they say, will you be my mentor? Do not do that. Don't ask them for permission. You hijack them, okay? They don't need to know that they're your mentor. You don't need to tell them that you're their protege, right? So these were my mentors. My first job out of school in New York City in June 1980 was working for Massimo and Leila Vignelli. I was just this junior assistant, junior sub-assistant baby sub-design, pre-design guy from Ohio who didn't know how to dress, didn't know how to talk. They were these incredibly sophisticated, legendary people from Italy. And I leached onto them like a parasite, and I sucked everything I could out of them for the next 10 years until I was fat and bloated, just like a big parasitical insect. What a horrible metaphor, but that's what I was with them, right? And so that's the trick. You don't have to ask people to be your mentor. Like anyone you know can be a mentor. You just have to start listening and being curious and paying attention. You don't have to even meet the person. Someone who has a TED Talks video can be your mentor. The person sitting next to you in the audience can be your mentor, okay? Mentors, and you can have as many as you want. I've had like hundreds of mentors. These were critical ones for me, but you can have as many as you want. And they're just there, it's free. It's there for the taking. Just don't tell them, that's all. Okay, so this is some of the stuff I learned from Massimo. I was working on something. When I started getting some responsibility there, they let me talk to clients. They let me sort of get involved with actually the production of jobs. And we had a client who was very demanding, kept making changes that seemed to be making the job worse, but I was really satisfied with keep making these changes. And the job was due on like Wednesday at 5, and Wednesday at 4, Massimo came over and said, what is that? And I said, that's the thing for the thing, blah, blah. And he said, it's horrible. And I said, yeah, but it's due in an hour. And he said, no, it isn't. He picked up the phone, called up the guy I was dealing with, his boss's boss, and says, there's this thing we're working on, we need more time. It's not right. And then and he hung up and said this. He said that. If you design something that's on time, it's under budget, it's all those other things, if it stinks, that's all people will notice. It doesn't matter, but it was on time, but it was on budget. It stinks, don't do it, okay? Image not available of that particular piece. He also said it this way, the only way to do good work is to do good work. There's no other shortcut around it. If you want to do good work, just do good work. How do you do good work? You do good work by doing good work. I know it sounds sensible, I guess, but it's the way to do it. So, Massimo used 5 typefaces, supposedly. Helvetica, Garamond, Bodoni, Century, Futura, depends. And just a few colors, and his favorite for me was PMS Super Warm Red, very similar to 032. And he liked Bodoni with me because I was from Parma, Ohio, and Giambattista Bodoni was from Parma, Italy, and he thought that there was some significance to that. There was no significance to that. And so I did a lot of things that were in that color and in that typeface. And I thought it was like an idea, and I thought it communicated things. And it did communicate consistency, and it did communicate, I think, taste. However, those aren't real ideas. And when I came to realize, it's the only case history I'm going to share with you today. I was working on this project for one of my favorite clients at Vignelli, and it was an invitation to an exhibition of avant-garde furniture in the mid-'80s, so it was like Memphis-style, kind of new wave-looking furniture. And I was really excited about this thing I was doing. I thought it was really cool. Then I got this other assignment for the same client, an announcement to a lecture for some scientists from NASA about designing for outer space. I thought that was really cool too. So I was really excited thinking about how lucky I am to be designing these two really cool things. What a lucky guy. And I had them completely designed. Then the client called up and said their budget had been cut in half and the two things had to be combined. And so I was so mad, and I said, but that really, I was already kind of like getting good at talking, and I said, well, that won't really have the effect you're seeking because, there's two different audiences and they're two very different subject matters. And they said, it doesn't matter, we don't have any money, so just deal with it. And I was so mad, I slammed down the phone, and I said, what do they expect? Something like this? And I drew the following thing, which is the announcement for the furniture thing, and upside down, it's a little rocket ship. So, I looked at this thing and I don't remember, I didn't really design this, it just sort of came out. And I took it home and I showed it to my lovely wife Dorothy, and I said, look at this is the best thing I've ever designed. And she said, who drew this? And I said, me. And she said, who are you gonna get to draw it? And I said, I'm just going with this sketch. And indeed we did. And what was cool about it was that I realized that, hey, it's super warm red and it's Bodoni, but the reason people responded to it wasn't because it was red and Bodoni. That just helped them understand where it was coming from. The reason they liked it was because there was an idea to it. Now, I'm not saying it's the greatest idea in the world and the greatest executed idea in the world, but that's the idea, right? And so ideas are the most important thing, and that's something to remember. So when I worked for the Vignellis, Massimo and Leila were both really important. I went there as a fan of Massimo's because he's a genius and he's famous, but I became a real fan of Mrs. Vignelli, of Leila Vignelli, and the reason is that she made that office work. She was the one who actually would say, Massimo, that'll fall over if you do it like that. Massimo, the client will never accept that. That's ridiculous. Massimo, you left out, the last two letters in the client's name. Massimo, and Massimo would say, but it looks fantastic this way. And he'd say, Massimo, their name has like 7 letters, not 5. And so. Massimo would sort of characterize their symbiotic relationship as saying, I'm the engine and Leila's the brakes. And I remember thinking, oh, that's cool, I want to be the engine too. I just need to find someone else to be the brakes. And who wants to be the brakes anyway? It's like being like a downer, It's like, no, it won't work. It's just great to have these ideas. Then, as I went along and I started understanding the practical aspects of design more and more, I remembered what I had learned in driver's ed, which is this. You don't die because the car won't start, you die because the brakes fail. And so Leila kept that office alive, and the only reason you've heard of Massimo Vignelli is because of Leila Vignelli, I promise you that. So you need an engine and you need brakes. If you're one of those two, find the other one. If you have both inside you, congratulations, that's perfect, okay? There they are, Massimo and Leila. And they loved each other. And I remember thinking, if I could find a partner that I loved, I would be going to partnership with them. Now, my lovely wife, Dorothy, although she saved me with that photograph, is a clinical psychologist, actually, and not a designer, sort of like a designer, I guess, but not really. But so she couldn't be my partner, so I just was always looking for who the right partner or partners could be, and I was very lucky because after 10 years at Vignelli, I became a partner in Pentagram, and these were my partners when I joined. I was the youngest partner then in 1990. This is closer to today. I am the second oldest partner now. That's how it works, though, this passage of time. It's really weird, and I've never given a presentation where I thought about it quite so much. It's an amazing thing to be surrounded by people who you respect, who you admire, who inspire you. If you can do it as fast as you can. And if you can make it work, do whatever it takes to make it work. It's like love, it's like a marriage, it's worth putting the time into, and it'll repay that time you put into it 100, 1,000 times over. You can tell how I am, right? It took me a really long time. I think I was in my mid-30s till I realized that you actually learn things if you shut up and listen to other people talk. It drove me crazy, actually. I just always had something clever to say. I secretly wanted to demonstrate how smart I was. They'd start saying something, and I'd say, I know that already, I read that somewhere, and I'd cut them off, and it's like, I'm not sure it's impressive, but it is like really obnoxious, and you don't actually learn anything because you're constantly broadcasting out and you're not receiving. So this is a more note to myself, but this is something that took me a long time to learn. I carry these notebooks around with me, a notebook everywhere I go, and I fill it not so much with drawings or inspirational looking creative things, but I just write down what I'm hearing, I write down what I'm seeing. And these things end up really fueling a lot of the work I end up doing. This is 109, there's 108 that led up to this one, they go all the way back to 1982. There's different ways to do this one works for me. Okay, this is another one that I think is one of the key ones. It's that graphic design is your free license to go anywhere you want. One of the joys of being a graphic designer, once you realize that it's not about what typeface it is, what color it is, what shape you're making it, is that if you're listening and paying attention, you hear the most amazing things. You get a job and it's with, say, a newspaper company. I was in a room where the editors were planning what would go on the next day's front page. And I was there because I was doing the bathroom signs. And I said, well, it's really important for me to kind of experience the newspaper, right? That was like worth the whole price of being there, just being right in the midst of that thing with no journalism degree, no qualifications whatsoever. You know, I've worked with authors on solving murder mysteries. I've been in the locker room of professional football teams. I've sat with research scientists and, you know, academic institutions. I've talked to future presidents, perhaps. And it's because you design best when you're interested in the subject matter. And like when I was in my mid-30s, I sort of looked back at a lot of the work I'd done, and I realized that all the stuff that was good was stuff that I was really interested in. And the stuff that wasn't so good were things I didn't care about as much. Now, I think many of you have heard this already, and a lot of you know how that works, and you can sense that is true. So there's two things you can do. One thing you can do is think, well, I'm really interested in skateboards, and so what I'm gonna do is do nothing but skateboard graphics. That's one way to do it, okay? And if you make that work, and some people have, good, do that. I'm not good enough to do that, and so what I did was the other thing. I decided to be as interested in as many things as possible, and that would kind of increase my chances of designing something decent. There's a few things I'm still not interested in, but like I don't actually care about professional football that much. But like, you know, believe me, I was like the biggest Jets fan when I was doing that stuff. Yeah, let's go Jets, looking good. This is the year, baby. Okay. You know, so be interested in things and you'll be a better designer. And it took me a long time to figure that out. I kept thinking, why don't they give me anything interesting to work on? It's not their problem, it's my problem. I wasn't ready to be interested, and now I think I am. And even small jobs are worth paying attention to. I was 43 years old when this small job got done by someone else. It's a ballot design that was done in Palm Beach County, Florida in 2000. You students of history or people who were alive back then may recall that the presidential election got completely tied, and it came down to Florida. It came down to a few counties in Florida. It came down to counties like Palm Beach County. And in Palm Beach County, they had designed a ballot that made it very confusing about, it was very easy to vote for the #1 position, the top hole, because that's George W. Bush. Second guy down on the left, that's Al Gore. Second hole down is actually a vote for Pat Buchanan, okay? So they estimate that maybe as many as 2,000 people accidentally voted for Pat Buchanan when they meant to vote for Al Gore. And it's debatable how many votes it took for George W. Bush to carry Florida, but some people say it was well under 2,000. So George W. Bush was president for 8 years because of typography. Okay? So the next time you're doing something and you think what you're doing isn't important, this is a one-color job, had to be done fast, too much type, not enough space, government budget, you know, whatever. And, you know, 8 years of that one president instead of another president. Be careful when you're doing this. It can hurt people if you do it wrong. Design counts, okay? Then knowing how to, some people said, is it important to know how to draw anymore? I actually think knowing how to write and knowing how to read is just as important as knowing how to draw. We're graphic designers, we work with words, those words are important, respect them. I was really fortunate about a dozen years ago, a couple friends of mine, Jessica Helfand and Bill Drentel, asked me if I'd like to work on a blog with them called Design Observer. we've been involved with that for like more than a dozen years now. Because of that, I was able to derive a book of essays that I had written just for that. And writing those essays actually helped make me a better designer, because it forced me to think through what kind of decisions I was making, why I was making them, and everything else. So write, read, it makes you a better designer. Okay, and another thing that makes you a better designer is teaching, okay? If you want to learn something, teach. I say this often, but not to this many people once. I'm not a good teacher. I know what good teaching is. I had great teachers. Up at the Yale School of Art, where I have my very limited minor teaching position, there are great teachers there. I know what great teachers do. I'm not the greatest teacher in the world. What I can do is come up with a kind of assignment that will kind of produce some work and help move people along with it. So about 5 or 6 years ago, no, it's 10 years ago probably, we started doing this thing up at Yale called the 100-Day Project, which is like the thing that Keitra showed this morning a little bit, where you just do something every day. So this is a poster that Danielle Spinat and Lan Yu did for it in 2007. Basically, you just do an exercise every day for 100 days, and I came into class twice. I came in on day 1 and day 100, and I was like the long-distance coach the rest of the time. What was produced for that class to this day kind of inspires me when I go back and look at that work. And we did it like 6 or 7 years, and it was just amazing to see what the students would produce, and it really inspired me. And so also, just like you should just hijack your mentors, you're never too old to be a protege. I am like old now, and that means that there are fewer and fewer old people to be my mentors. So I will pick anyone for a mentor, and there's no age limit or age requirement. And so some of my biggest, most important mentors now are the team of designers that works for me. I've had 50 people work for me at Pentagram over the last 25 years I've been there. That's a little bar chart showing all their different terms of employment. And I just to recognize, what a contribution they make to the work that I do and we do together, I'm just going to name the ones that work for me right now. It's Tracy Cameron, Britt Cobb, Aaron Fay, Angie Foster, Lacey Ho, Jesse Reed, Hamish Smythe, okay? These guys, without these guys, you never would have heard of me either, okay? So they're the ones that really deserve the credit. They're my mentors now, okay? I look to them to help keep me straight. Okay, finally, I was president of AIGA back in 2000. And everyone wanted design to have, graphic design to have more widespread attention to design. What we do is important. People should really pay attention to it. And if I would have stood on a stage like this and told a bunch of designers like you that in 15 years, when a logo was launched, the whole country would talk about it. Everyone would sort of be debating, is it good or is it bad? And people would have said, that's preposterous, that's never going to be true. Well, it is, except it's like this. I did that logo, so thank you for the input, Joe. If what we do is important, we have to be willing to take responsibility for the public discourse that it provokes, right? You can't just say, I think it's important. You can't say it's important that you like me, or it's important that you think I'm cool, or it's important that you think everything we do is great. You just have to think it's important that what we do is looked at thoughtfully, discussed, critiqued like that, or whatever. And I think people will get better at this, we'll get better at it. It forces us to think more clearly about what we do. It forces our clients to think more clearly about what they're doing. And I think for the most part, it's actually a good thing. And you just need, all of you will eventually learn you have to develop a thick skin and nerves of steel if you want to practice this dangerous thing called graphic design. Because, as I always say, starting about a month ago, it's not a diving competition. You're not being judged on what happens when you hit the water. It's how long you can swim. So you have to practice your strokes and your breathing, keep your head up and not drown, okay? Finally, one more thing. I'm taking Italian lessons and I'm really, really, really bad at it. I have another class scheduled, and I think I'm gonna just ask if I can just start over at the beginning of the lessons and go back to the first one, because it just isn't working for me. I know one nice Italian phrase, which is this one. Ancora imparo, ancora imparo. And that means, it was a statement by another Michelangelo. It means I'm still learning. And it was found in the margins of a drawing he did when he was 87. So, thank you, keep learning.